Top of the morning folks, today from the Reddit Rainforest. Alright, get your throwaways out. What is your biggest secret you keep from everyone? Not a throwaway, but none of my friends know about this account. When I was 17, my best friend was 16 and a year behind me in school. We had met in a split class of grade 4 and 5 students. A couple weeks after the new school year started, we went out biking on a weekend and he went over an edge on the pathway we were on and died. It was a 25-foot drop onto a rocky ridgeline and then into a river another 50 feet below, and he landed head first. It was declared an accident. His bike had slipped on something and lost control, and he went right over the edge. I was riding in front and did not notice anything till I heard the crash behind me. He did not make a sound going over the edge. When I turned around and looked, it was a sight I will never forget and still have nightmares about. I had a cell phone with me and called 911, but there was nothing to be done. Even from up where I was, I could see his helmet had cracked and blood pooling around his head. His family blamed me for the death, even though it was an accident, saying I had pushed him to ride too hard. It was a bike path in the city, but they needed an excuse, or that I had distracted him, stuff like that. About 9 months later, I had to clear out our locker at school. Even though I was in grade 12 and he was in grade 11, we arranged to share a locker. At the end of the school year, as I was cleaning it out, I found an envelope taped to the bottom, a shelf addressed to me. I took it home, and it was more than a month before I could open it. 2 days after my 18th birthday, and it turned out to be a suicide note he had written the Friday before the accident. It laid it all out, including the very details of how he planned to do it, down to the bend in the pathway that had no guardrail, and the reason for why he was doing it. It has been almost 8 years since I opened that note and have only told a lawyer, who I contacted, about having to turn the note over to the cops. He said no and gave me a detailed written explanation for me to keep as to why I did not have to, and a counselor a couple years later. The note and the explanation from the lawyer in a lockbox, as I cannot bring myself to get rid of it. To this day his family still blames me for his death, but I refuse to tell them the truth, as their religious beliefs would make it impossible to bear. Back in HS, my friend died after he attempted a jump on his dirt bike. At his funeral, we were instructed to say the last things X said to us. Me and the others that were there for his last jump made a pact to lie. We said his last words were "Ocon" and other forms of that, when in fact his last words were, "Duck you fags." Watch this. My longtime partner thinks the first time we met was at a party hosted by a mutual friend in 2005. We met in 04. I used to work in a video game store. She walked in and asked me about a game. Bought it and left. It was not a love at first sight thing or anything, but when I met her a year later, I recognized her instantly. Since it was a bit awkward to introduce myself, the clerk who served you at such and such a place, I played along like I'd never seen her before. Things developed and she's so enamored by the story of us meeting for the first time at this malarkey little party in the middle of nowhere that I have never had the heart to tell her or ask her about the little boy she called her son that day in the store. I was walking home from my school. I was 13. It's a remote path near a forest, when this dude walked up to me and started talking. I started walking faster and tried to politely tell him to duck off, but he would not listen. He reached for a knife and told me to go with him. I tried to escape, but he chased me down and wrestled me for quite a bit on the ground and tried to stab me. During this fight, I grabbed the hand that he was holding a knife with, twisted it and stabbed him right in the stomach. Blood poured on my t-shirt. The guy was screaming and I ran away. 2 days later, I bought a local newspaper that had an article in which the police bragged about finding a local rapist after he was admitted to hospital with a stab wound. I have never told this to anyone. My younger sister is severely mentally handicapped. She only learned to walk. Sort of. She usually cannot go more than a few stumbling feet by herself. When she was 10 years old, and has the communication abilities of an infant. That is, when she wants something, or is bothered in the slightest, she screams. But unlike an infant, she has the lung capacity of a 20-year-old woman. The sound of her scream is horrifying. It's not really like the scream of a person who has learned to scream. Caring for her is a 24/7 job. My mom barely gets any sleep because she's up most nights trying to keep my sister from fussing. And it's not just that. My sister is strong and likes to hit and dig her nails into your arm until she draws blood. There is no apparent rewarding side to caring for her, because not only is there not affection from her, but I have often wondered if she even knows who any of us are. My family has people come in to take care of her while my parents are at work, but the women sent by the agencies are almost always horrible pieces of human malarkey. The two exceptions were nursing students who could not keep working with us when they graduated. Other than that, we have super ghetto/white trash women who have stolen from us, brought their convict into our home, and mostly spend the time at our house watching TV, talking on our phone, using our computer, and ignoring my sister. My parents learned not to complain to the agency because they always send someone just as bad to replace the last. And my parents just shrug now and say, well, at least she's not violent. My parents are not happy. I do not think we have done anything as a family more than a couple of times since my sister was born. My mom developed an anxiety disorder. I only realized how anxious and depressed I was living at home when I moved out to go to college. When I think about the fact that if something happens to my parents, it'll be responsible to my sister, I cannot sleep and I just want to cry. I cannot send her to a home because it turns out she's too hard to control for most of them to take her. And after dealing with the women sent by agencies, I do not really want to think about leaving her in a state-run institution. I have never talked about this with anyone. My real secret is, I think my family and my sister would be better off if we could kill her quickly, humanely, and painlessly. There does not seem to be a real reason to prolong her life because she seems to spend a lot of it in pain. She's on a lot of medication, some of it for pain, a lot of it for I do not know what, and I cannot imagine she feels anything resembling joy. But really, selfishly, it's because the stress of caring for her has left my mom a sort of a shell of a person and I'm terrified of having to give up my life and career to become what my mom is now for a sister who may not even know who I am. I have this recurring fantasy where I have my leg amputated below the knee. Sometimes it's in a car accident. Sometimes it's cancer. Sometimes it's a blood clot la house. But the end result is always the same. I get an artificial leg and all sorts of sympathy from my friends. It's really ducking weird. And every time I find myself in a car or public transportation, I imagine the situation in which the thing would crash and take off my leg. It gets really intense sometimes, to the point where I have to hold myself back from accidentally walking into traffic. I considered not posting in this one, and I think maybe I should not have, but I am not a terribly bright individual, and I spent the first 26 years of my life basically totally alone. Very few friends. Lots of work that had me travel from hotel room to hotel room. Very long-term relations. You know the drill. At one point I was living on a ranch about 40 miles from a major city, and about 3 miles from the nearest neighbor. To make an already too long story short, there was a strip mall about 15 miles from my house at the time, and that was the nearest place to get booze. So I went there a lot. One night, when I was leaving, I heard the unmistakable sound of a sex, and I looked. And I saw what appeared to be an unconscious woman being plowed into by a guy. I thought, don't not do anything, and then I yelled at him, and he really hauled ass upward and away. So I went to her and right as I was pulling her panties up, she came back, asked where she was, and then freaked out on me and started clawing and kicking. She got away from me, thinking that I was raping her, and I was too terrified to follow her. I was too afraid to walk into a police office and say what I knew. I would have walked in with freshly bleeding scrapes on my face and I feel like I would have been punished. But I should have. I know it. I have known it for around 4 years now. I should have done it. I should have followed her. Or just walked into the county station the next day. But I did not. And that makes me a coward. Edit. If you are enjoying the video, subscribe for more free videos like this in your sub box. Semicolon. Not a throwaway. Because I don't really care. I was attacked by 5 men when I was 17 years old. I stabbed 3 of them, killing 1, charged with second-degree murder, and exonerated due to self-defense. None of my friends in the city I live in have any idea. Had a easy peasy, 24-year-old virgin here. Everyone assumes I have. The thing with being a virgin in your later years is that 1, everyone assumes you have already lost it, and 2, most people are mature enough not to even care. It's a welcome relief from the awkward high school and college years. My wife of 13 years loves me, and we get along well. We are very good friends. But we very rarely have sex. Maybe once every 6 months. In addition, when we do, it is exactly the same script as every sexisode we have ever had. She has no interest in changing it. In contrast, her best friend is cute, flirty and very married. Because my wife trusts me, she tells me things this friend told her that she does for her husband. Among other things, she will go down on him. Not something I have ever experienced. Touch him through his pants at a table in a public place. Be naked when he gets home from work, essentially make him feel wanted physically. As a result, I find myself thinking about the friend all the time and finding any excuse for us to get together as couples. My wife assumes this is just because she is friend. I feel so guilty, but feel like I missed out on all that and that it is such a big part of what my life could have been. I have told a few people, but it's certainly not something I tell everyone or even try to think about. When I was little, I would go to sleep over at my granddad's side. My dad's dad and my parents are no longer together. It would be pretty awesome. I was learning to read with the phonetics game, and they had this huge TV. I'm not sure how many times it happened, but I only remember it happening twice. My granddad had put me up on his bed, so I was laying down, and pulled out this long blue thing, a dildo, and started running up my leg over my cooch and then down the other side. It was over my clothes and everything. But after he did it to me, he would make me do it to him. I know at one point I told him I did not want to and did not like it. He had told me, but you used to love it, and things like that. Eventually, after snooping in my emails, my mom found out and asked me if that was why I stopped wanting to go to his house for sleepover, and I said yes. She told me next time that I should probably tell her. I said okay. That was the end of that. I still see my granddad, give him hugs, tell him I love him, and things like that. I do not think my dad knows. I'm not going to tell him. It is mega awkward and super uncomfortable. I told everyone I broke up with my high school sweetheart of 3 years because we were going to different colleges. But I really broke up with her because she was emotionally abusive and made me cry at least once a week by making me feel like such a piece of malarkey that I could not take it anymore. My dad was an international drug smuggler who took me on holiday to exotic places purely so he did not look suspicious. I was 11. He got arrested on a motorway half hour away from our then house with a car full of cocaine. I find this highly amusing. I'm a self-made multi-millionaire and nobody in my family has any idea. I'm talking parents, siblings, relatives, etc. They know I'm doing well because I have got a few nice things and get to travel, and I'm not really all that strung out. I usually live within my means, and I'm pretty secretive about my splurging. A few of my friends and business contacts know. It's awesome. There are not high expectations for me. I love to help out money-wise, but it's never over the top help. Just enough to get people to where they need to be without a free ride. I started with fairly little and worked hard for what I have earned, and I appreciate it more as a result. I think it's key in being responsible money. One of the reasons I do not tell my family is because in our community, other ethnic background, there are a small handful of other wealthy people, and whenever they only donate a half ducton of money to some cause related to our background, instead of a full ducton, they get condescending remarks and just an all-around bunch of negative BS. I have seen my family members do it, and I want no part in it being shown in a negative light. I donate anonymously to get around it. Just as gratifying. Not being able to tell does suck sometimes, because I love my family. And if push comes to shove someday, I'll probably spill the beans during some emergency. So far, no emergencies. Welcome to the end of the video. Do not worry, there are many more. Come aboard for more adventures. Like and subscribe for more posts from the Reddit Rainforest. Thanks for watching.